good morning, evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Harrison Smith back after a long hiatus with another episode of Cinema. I put a poll out a little recently on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and asked if anybody would be interested in hearing another episode or two, and I'll put them together as I go. I took the show off the air for a little because I kind of felt that I had to say everything that I had to say. I didn't know what else there was to say because I always worry about if I'm going to end up sounding like I'm ranting all the time. And that's not what this is. The podcast, for those of you maybe getting acquainted with it or even reacquainted, is really about how viewers should be looking for more and expecting more of their entertainment and not just, just accepting what they give us. And the deadly word is content. We're not looking at art anymore. We're not looking at creativity. And I think in the time that I stopped doing the episodes, which was, I believe, right around Ghostbusters Afterlife, a lot has changed, and maybe not even changed. It's just kind of come to the fore. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll come back. I'll say a few words and look at things. I think what really is driving me in the return to cinema is the illusion, or maybe it's not even that. It's this nostalgia porn, I think, is really what the best word is for it. It really is nostalgia porn. And that will lead me into Alien Romulus, which is coming up in just a few minutes. But looking back on something like Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I was pretty kind to the movie overall, and mostly because of the sentiment for what they did with Harold Ramis, and it was kind of like what they had to do. And it's almost like the movie had a built-in defense mechanism that you don't dare criticize it, because then you're a dick, or you're a cold-hearted bastard, or you're just mean or nasty, angry, whatever the words are, a hater. I hate that word, hater, which I am not. But I probably should reassess Afterlife, especially in the wake of Frozen Empire and where that franchise is going. And most of all, a franchise that should have never been a franchise. Ghostbusters, I've said it before many times, the 1984 original film is a standalone. It didn't need a sequel. And even though it sounds like I'm coming down on Afterlife or Frozen Empire, a lot of people forget just how bad Ghostbusters 2 was. And I referenced that in my assessment of remakes, reimaginings, and reboots when I talk about the 2016 film. The recent Halloween trilogy has also gone down the nostalgia porn route. And, the one thing that I hear people getting upset about is saying, well, what's wrong with a little fan service? Well, the answer is there's nothing wrong with a little fan service. But as you'll see coming up, even with Alien Romulus, which I want to start out with, is an extremely well-made film. And I'll go into why I enjoyed the movie very much. However, there are a lot of warning signs. So I guess the first place to start is, let's go right to the beginning with Alien Romulus. So we see the wreckage of the Nostromo, and I'm sitting in this theater by myself. I love seeing movies just by myself. I mean, it's great to watch it with a huge audience. There might have been, 15 people in the audience when I saw this. So we go back to the Nostromo. So, what we're doing is Alvarez is taking us back to the 1979 film. So let me give some context here before it sounds like, I'm going down this I hate nostalgia road. No one loves 80s nostalgia, probably more than I. I mean, I wrote a book about it called I Live the 80s, which is all about my high school years. And in fact, I mention not only in that book, but also my very first book, this time it's personal, which was all about seeing horror films and the memories and experiences that they give on the big screen. And I saw the first Alien on the big screen. And I will temper it with this: I have seen every major alien film on the big screen. Not counting the Alien versus Predators, because I don't even know where to put them in, but it does include the 2 prequels by Ridley Scott, Prometheus and Covenant, and up to Romulus. So watching them in the theater is an entirely different experience. And when you saw Alien in 1979, and some of you can understand what I'm talking about, you were watching something really cool. And aside from the chestburster scene, the scene where Dallas is in that air shaft and he's running as they're tracking the xenomorph on the radar tracker, the motion tracker, whatever it is that they built. When that thing reached out for him, oh my God, like I literally, and I use the word literally, jumped up out of my seat and ran for the aisle. And it was my mother who grabbed the back of my shorts and threw me back down. She dragged me back and threw me back down in my seat because Alien was R. And although I had already seen 2 R-rated movies, the first being the Amityville Horror in 1979, I broke my R-rated cherry on, sadly, the Amityville Horror. That was a waste. And then also Caddyshack, about basically a year later. However, Alien in 1979 was not just an R. It was a hard R. And my mother kind of thought, well, I'll just drop these asshole kids off and I can go about and have a free evening. No, the box office lady told her, and she had driven us to Mount Pocono to a little place called the Casino Theater in Mount Pocono. And I think it's still there. She told my mother, you know, this isn't Star Wars. You have to go in with them. And my mother was pissed because she didn't really like horror movies. And she had heard a lot about this one, and she didn't want to sit through it. But she brought me, my brother, and a friend, and she knew, well, I guess I'm stuck. So that's why she dragged me and threw me back down in the seat, because it's like, if I have to suffer through this and you made me do this, I thought I'd get a free night, then you're going to fucking sit there and watch this movie. And by the time the movie was over, I knew I saw something great. I saw something different, and we can go on forever on how Ridley Scott's original 1979 Alien changed the face of science fiction forever, and even horror, space horror especially. So I'm giving everything its due here. So Alien Romulus decides, okay, we've gone through 1986's Aliens. We went through Alien 3 and all the issues that went on there. And of course, we got the very goofy and odd, but I got to admit, sometimes pretty interesting Alien Resurrection. And then we come back. We come full circle. But there is something in between that I want to talk about here, which is probably why I enjoyed Alien Romulus as much as I did. And that is the video game, Alien Isolation, because I was looking at a giant big screen version of that video game that night in the theater. And I love that video game. I kept saying over and over as I played it, and the deeper I got, why aren't they turning this into a movie? I don't understand why this isn't happening. So pieces of the Nostromo are scattered all over after Ripley, of course, destroyed it, set the self-destruct and blew it to smithereens, which the size of that explosion, I'm amazed anything survived that, just if it wasn't just burnt into embers. But I guess they're in the general vicinity of not only where it exploded, because we have to assume that these large chunks, I'm getting so literal here, I'm really picking out detail here, which I hate, but I'm assuming that the larger chunks of the Nostromo were scattered millions of miles away from the detonation site, which would explain why they find what they do. So apparently, the original xenomorph from 1979 wasn't killed after all. And I have a problem with that. So I guess what it did, since they never really even discuss if these things can survive without air or oxygen or even proper pressure and the freezing cold of space, this thing created a cocoon, and it went into some type of stasis is the best word for it. And it was just floating around out there till this salvage ship, whatever kind of ship, a rescue ship, I doubt it was a rescue ship, more like salvage, found it. So, and then they bring it back to this big station where hilarity will ensue after it hatches out. So they bring it back, and just before the credits open, we see them cutting the cocoon open. And of course, they're going to find a fun toy surprise. And that's where I want to stop for a minute, where the cynicism of this franchise, and most of all, not even this franchise, of filmmaking comes in. I don't understand why we have to go back. We're constantly going back. No one is going forward. And that is where I will give due to both Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection. Nowhere do they come close to the enjoyment factor or even the overall structure of the first two films. However, they did try something different, and especially Resurrection. Although they go back, right? They bring Ripley back. We have to bring some type of connection to the original film back. But they tried something. And with this, I don't see the point in bringing back the original Xenomorph because of a number of reasons. I mean, again, if you want to get into extreme detail, she not only sucked it out of the lifeboat, but she harpooned it. She shot it, which from what I understand was not in the original script. So this was something that happened while they're shooting. But this thing has acid for blood. Why didn't it burn holes? Because it sprays all over the place. Why didn't it burn holes in that airway, in that doorway, and create some type of micro hole, which would have eventually depressurized and imploded the ship while she was asleep in cryosleep for 50 some years. So again, you can do this kind of thing and pick fly shit out of pepper and look at all the minutia. I'm willing to suspend my disbelief. But the problem that I have with all of this is that once again, everything that Ripley worked for has been discarded. She sacrificed everything at the end to get to that ship. She blew up the ship. She destroyed her career, only to find out now, here we are 40 years later, that none of that mattered. It didn't matter what she did. There are so many of these things all over the place. I don't know why this had to be the original one, except obviously showing it's amazing that, a large chunk of the Nostromo ship that survived and was intact just happened to carry the name of the ship, Nostromo. Just to let us know, and also to let the audience know, you're back in familiar territory. So I know you're saying, Harrison, who cares? Just go with it. And that's kind of how I felt. Okay, I'm here. I paid $15 for this movie. I'm going for the ride. Let's see where it takes me. And then we start getting into something that I thought was really cool. I already felt the evoking of the video game in the opening shots with the retrieval ship. But then we get to this mining planet. And then we get some characters, at least we get Andy, which I knew within 30 seconds he was some kind of android, probably one that was damaged. I wasn't wrong in any of those respects. And by now that's not a spoiler. And quite frankly, if it's a spoiler, you really need to go back and learn how to analyze movies because they pretty much telegraph this from the start. And we get our main character, Rain, and they have a nice relationship. I like that she protects him. And I'm thinking like, okay, we're on this mining planet. I mean, that's a little Alien 3 there, but this is cool. Like we have some characters they can get behind. And then the look of everything, and most of all, the mining part of it with Weyland Yutani is clearly defined in the video game in Alien Isolation. So I thought we're getting some type of precursor or setting things up for an eventual sequel that's going to incorporate Alien Isolation. And I was really, really hoping that. And we do definitely get elements of it, especially by the time that we get onto the main ship or this station, this Romulus and Remus station that is floating around this mining planet, which is now derelict because it's become infected infested really with the xenomorphs. But the whole look, everything that Alvarez did was fantastic. I'm like, I love that video game. So already you've won my heart by, thinking that we might be going in this direction. And we kind of just get the same thing. Again, I want to make it clear. I like the movie. It is definitely right up there with one of the best made. But here's the other part. I was a fan of Prometheus way back when I saw it in theaters. And when I got it on DVD, I must have watched that numerous times because of the way the movie made me feel. Yes, I know it has plot holes. Yes, I know it has issues. But that's not all that movies are. Jaws has issues. You really want to get down to fucking brass tacks? A shark doesn't have jowls, okay? The jowls are there to cover the hydraulics because the mouth at that time, they couldn't construct it where the mouth could open like a regular shark with that smooth kind of jawline, that hinge. So they had to create jowls. And the shark does not move anywhere near like a real great white shark. Do we give a shit? You really shouldn't. So that's my point. I'm willing to suspend my disbelief on a number of things here. But Prometheus really made me feel something. It made me feel sad and maudlin because I will never get to see these kind of worlds. I will never get to experience an off world. And I loved that the movie at first, once we get on to the Prometheus, is really told through David's point of view. So I did some research on that to find that the original 3 scripts that were touted and proposed for the Prometheus prequel trilogy were very different. And they were basically David's story, where he finds the engineers, why he wipes them out, as David, this android, becomes this kind of like demigod. But most of all, what I loved is David likes humans or admires them enough to copy them, like he does with Lawrence of Arabia, with Peter O'Toole. But then he hates them because everybody treats him like a fucking dick in the movie, except for Shaw. And then, of course, we know what happens to her in Covenant. And that's where I felt everything went wrong. I think there's less wrong with Prometheus than there is with Covenant, and Covenant poisoned Prometheus. Yes, I know at the end we get the Deacon alien, and Prometheus's biggest mistake for me is that it started to become too much about the aliens and it became the thing where people are transforming and all of that. I wanted less of that. I wanted to know more about the engineers. I wanted to know, like Wayland, why do they hate us? What did they create us? That opening, in the very opening of the film, is obviously them creating us and creating life on the planet. They don't really say whether there's other life on the planet on Earth at that time. However, who knows? My point is, Prometheus, I gave a lot of respect to in the beginning, even its score, right down to its score. There's just something so great about it. And there were a lot of haters in the beginning. There were a lot of people that they were expecting one thing and they didn't get another because everybody wants answers, answers, answers. We need everything buttoned up. We need to bring back minutia, tiny characters, minuscule characters that have absolutely nothing to do with a plot line, just like the Halloween trilogy did. I sat in the theater watching the 2018 Halloween, and then even with Halloween Kills, which was just god-awful, and Halloween Ends, which I can give some points to for trying something different, but that'll be another broadcast. That'll be another episode. But I heard people in the theater going, "Oh my God, that's Nurse Chambers. Oh my God, that's Tommy Doyle. Oh my God, that's Lindsay Wallace." Who gives a shit? None of these characters are all that important. And they blew it all up. The logic of Halloween 2018 is that this small town that had 3 murders in it has been grieving and living in fear for 40 years. And nobody moved on. And it's kind of like, why? There should be something more to all of this. And instead, it's just, let's just keep bringing back old character like Lonnie. We have to bring back Lonnie, the kid that Dr. Loomis scared when he was standing outside of Myers' house. And that's only there for people my age. The Halloween movies, the 2018 new trilogy, is not made to attract any new, younger audiences. It's there to give fan service to people my age and Gen X and millennials. That's really what it is. But that I'm going off track here. But that's kind of like what Alien Romulus has done. Now, they gave props to the video game, and I kept expecting more of that plot line to develop. But then we get Rook, who is the opposite name of Bishop. Okay, the Bishop's Rook. And it's played by a CGI deepfake Ian Holm. So we have an android that has somehow survived the onslaught of these aliens, ripped apart very much like Bishop in Aliens. And okay, we get all that. And we have Andy, the new android that is performing damage. So, we're giving a nod to mentally challenged people, and he's a very sympathetic character. But we have this new android called Rook. And my number one question is why? Why does it have to look like Ash from the original 1979 film? It's distracting. The deep fake is very, very messy. I don't even know if that's the right word. It's not polished. They did better work with Harrison Ford in Dial of Destiny and even Peter Cushing in Rogue One. So I don't know why they couldn't have done a better job with this. But you could have avoided this altogether and saved a fuck ton of money on the budget and just either had a separate android. You don't need the same android, because here's my question. You really want to pick fly shit out of pepper. Then you're saying that there were numerous Ashes, the model called Ash, a science officer android, deployed on numerous ships. And Dallas, who seemed pretty savvy, the captain of the Nostromo, didn't know this. He didn't happen to run into one of these previous, science officers. I mean, obviously Ash is a model, so there have to be multiple Ash units out there. He's never even heard of that. No one's ever discussed it. It's never come up. Hey, if you ever get one of those Ash units, just so you know, they're not exactly the most friendly type, whatever it may be. I find that hard to believe. But then you have Lance Henriksen, who is still alive. So why didn't you bring him back in some way? Like, you could de-age him if you wanted to. Make it a Bishop model. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that, other than this is absolute nostalgia porn. There is nothing there other than just to put him in. It's a facial. That's what it is. This is bukkake. And it's only there for people my age. I'm getting the facial because somebody who's under the age of 40 is not getting this. They're just like, I don't know, why does it look that way? Who is this guy? They never really say. And in fact, then Ash even says about, lying about your chances and blah, 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 blah. Again, only for people like me. And I like it. Thank you for the nod. But I'll tell you what, I'd rather have less nods to the past than to give me something new and inventive and fresh and fun. I'd like to see that for a change, especially for $15 fucking dollars when the first Alien film that I saw cost about $3. So you could do that. But here's the ultimate thing. You really want to be a hero in the Alien franchise, and that means embracing nostalgia while also pushing the story forward. Be the writer or the director or both that comes up with a way to fix the Newt error. The Newt error comes from Alien 3. And we all pretty much, if you're familiar with the franchise, you know what I'm talking about. And that is, we go through the entire sequel to Alien called Aliens, where Sigourney Weaver, who has lost her own daughter, adopts this little girl, sacrifices everything, her own life, the company ship, the rescue ship, all the other lives, Hicks, everybody, to save this little girl. And then we kill her off in the first minute of the opening titles of Alien 3. It's a slap in the face, and it's a big narrative mistake. It is a problem. So instead of bringing back old xenomorphs that perished, and I mean, I know you're saying it doesn't matter, they brought Ripley back. Yeah, I guess. What I'm saying is somebody be the hero and bring back Newt, or correct the timeline. Do something, because I heard word, and again, this is very early in the process, that the Alien Romulus sequel, because there's going to be one, it might take place in multiverses, alternate universes. Jesus Christ, do we need to put the Marvel formula to this now? Why do we have to do that? But again, that's all just preliminary talk. Remember, Alien 3 was originally going to take place on Earth. So who knows what's going to happen? This is very early, and they're in the discussion phases. Again, if they were smart, adapt the fucking video game and call it a day, and introduce a new character with Amanda Ripley. That's what you do. I already saw where Sigourney Weaver said I'd be open to returning. I don't want her to return. Ripley's story is over. Can we just get that through our heads? Can we stop with this? Again, somebody under 40 doesn't understand. They don't know. You're wasting effort, you're wasting energy, and you're missing the opportunity to take this franchise in a whole new direction. So again, I will say it. You want to be a hero in the Alien franchise, fix the Newt error. In addition to that, if they're going to greenlight another prequel, because now I've heard because of the success of Romulus, Ridley Scott might get his third entry into the prequel franchise from Prometheus and Covenant. And if that's the case, then go back to the original concept of David. Don't make the third one again. I mean, Covenant was nothing more than a remake of the 1979 film, except the Ripley was probably the same age, but with shorter hair. I don't even remember her name. All I wanted to know is, what the fuck was David up to? I mean, you killed off Shaw, which, again, I don't know why they did this. Why did you do that? There could have been so much about the two of them, and then getting off that planet and getting to the Engineers' planet. That would have been the great sequel. The original trilogy was to follow the Engineers and David's exploration of the Engineers to find that indeed they are God, and that there was a subplot that the reason why they wanted us dead, why they hated us so much, is because they sent one of theirs down to us to enlighten us, to raise us up, and we killed him. So there's a reference that that may have been Jesus, and that we killed him, and therefore we are just a brutal garbage race, a bad experiment that just needs to be wiped out and started over, which I guess hence is where the black goo comes into place. I don't know. We never really got the chance to find out. And I say this because Rook, the android in Romulus, evokes Prometheus, right down to the Prometheus theme that plays while he explains the black goo, and that it's a possible device for improving the human race, some type of genetic improvement advancing us. It's a lot of gobbledygook, and that's okay. We don't have to get into it deeply, but we're going back. We're constantly going back and back and back. And while there are some great elements to Romulus, there's also Alvarez's "don't breathe" moment, when they have to be quiet and walk through this gauntlet of face huggers, which was pretty clever about the body temperature thing and all of that. However, I got issues with that too, if you really want to get down to details. And then the aliens themselves, the xenomorphs, there's a lot of confusion on the reproductive cycle, how they go from the chest burster into an adult, how a queen is made, how the eggs are formed. I mean, I thought it was pretty clear somehow in Aliens that they kind of just bypassed any hints of how the xenomorphs are formed in the first film. They never really say. I mean, because they do kind of in the cut scenes that were restored in the Ridley Scott, I guess, director's cut. That's what people call it, but I don't know if that's really what it is. but it's a restored version where we see what happened to Brett, who is turned into an egg. At the same time when Dallas is saying to Ripley, kill me, kill me. But there's no queen, as far as we know, in the Nostromo. Now, does the original creature that hatches out have to kind of create a queen? Is there a process of creating the queen? We don't know. And then in Aliens, Ripley asks the question, well, if there are all these eggs, who's laying these eggs? And then, of course, at the end, we get our answer. It's the big queen. And that's fine. Now in Romulus, and they've kept that queen thing going through all the others, but in Romulus, we go from facehugger to chestburster to some kind of vaginal egg that the larger xenomorph comes from. And there are lots of other xenomorphs on the Romulus ship. However, no queen. Now, is there a queen somewhere and we just didn't see her? That's always possible. But do you see what I mean? We're more worried about these kind of things because that connects to our nostalgia, and that fucks with our way of seeing things. I guess that's the best way to see it. We don't want to be upset by the narratives we've already been given. So we don't want any real change to that. So we worry about those kind of things. So how is there a queen? Was there a queen? Is there a queen in down in the nest and we just didn't see her? Are the eggs formed a certain way? Is the queen laying? I don't care. How about advancing the plot and the overall franchise and story forward? And that means you could do that. Again, you want to be a hero, fix the Newt error. I will keep saying this over and over. Whoever does it is a hero. Hire me. I'll write it. However, we don't do that. We have all of our characters who we know are just alien fodder. They're going to get whacked by a facehugger. The pregnant girl, immediately we knew, is going to end up with something hatching out of her. And we just knew that was coming. And I remember reading that some people were like, oh my God, I had no idea, what a spoiler that, her cousin is the one who impregnated her. Who gives a shit? And it wasn't that hard to read. I mean, they're making googly eyes at each other all the time. Really? I mean, the only thing I thought the surprise would be, and it wasn't much of a surprise, is that Rain's boyfriend impregnated her. But then again, I think she was his sister or something like that. I that's what I mean. See what, I only saw the film once, and I guess I could get this information from Wikipedia. But why am I getting hung up on this? I should be looking for something better here. And I'm not seeing it. Again, well made. It's beautiful. The effects are top notch. Alvarez went back to a lot of practical effects. But here's another thing of, again, this cynical, just because you can doesn't mean you should. I still don't understand the overall concept of the anti-gravity thing and shooting the aliens with the acid in the air. I mean, I get some of it, but it was a lot of squeeze for the juice that we got, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm watching it going, all right, it looks cool. Visually, it's great. I get it. You got to float now. You can't touch it. The acid still burns. Gravity or no gravity, the acid still burns. And when that gravity kicks on, that acid's going to fall. So I get that. I still don't know why she did it. I know she was shooting all the aliens. I know she was, I still, that's what I'm saying. I'm getting hung up in this kind of bullshit. And I really shouldn't be. Go back and look at the first two films and ask yourself, did you get hung up on any of this kind of bullshit? Or did you just enjoy a really good movie? And that is the point of cinema. Now, did they set out to make a great film, an entertaining one? Yes. So I wouldn't say Alien Romulus qualifies as cinema in my definition, which again, if you've just tuned into this podcast, is you have the ability to make a great film. You have all the resources, the actors, the money, the budget, whatever it is, the effects. You have everything at your disposal to make a great film, and you consciously choose not to. That is cinema, CYNEMA, the title of this podcast. I would not say Alien Romulus qualifies as that. However, it does get tripped up in nostalgia. And that is the major problem with this film. When Andy says, get away from her, you bitch, there is no reason for that line to exist. This is not being a super fan. This is not being an Alien nerd. I'm telling you, there is no reason for that to exist. And to anybody who never saw Aliens or is too young, they're not going to get it. And the line means nothing. However, in context, in 1986, that brought the audience in the theater to their feet, applauding and cheering. In this scene, it's just said as a, here you go, guys, here's another nostalgia bone. Oh, wait, let us put our camera dick in front of your face and shoot some nostalgia jizz all over you just to keep you entertained, because that's really what this is. I felt all of these things while watching it. I was growing very tired of all the callbacks and throwbacks and nods. Paying homage is one thing, but I forget who said it, but nothing kills a sequel more than reverence. And if you want proof of that, just watch Superman Returns, which got rid of any fun, exciting moments for constant throwbacks to the first two Superman Richard Donner films. It became tedious. And that's how I started to feel with Alien Romulus by the end. We know where this is going. We know that the pregnant girl is going to hatch out something gruesome. And everybody online like, oh, no one went through pain like her. I don't understand this Gen Z kind of millennial fawning over this. They act like they've never fucking seen another previous episode of these films, another chapter of these films. The birthing scene in Prometheus is far more intense and wild than anything in Romulus. And then we get, of course, our throwback to not just Prometheus, but Alien 3, when this pregnant girl gives birth to a hybrid. And the hybrid is an engineer mixed with a human, with some kind of weird crustacean insect-like genitalia, and it's an extremely tall, slender man kind of feel. It's a true horror movie moment. It just felt tacked on. Like I thought, here we go. We're going to go through this and something's getting sucked out into space. We know that. And that's my problem. Alien Romulus probably goes about 15 minutes too long. I'll give you 10, but definitely 15 minutes too long. And it goes right to where we expect. She's going to say something like, die, motherfucker, fuck you, whatever it's going to be. And she's going to blow it out the airlock. And that's what happens. So again, spoilers, I don't know. If it's a spoiler, then you never saw any of the other films, I guess, because these aliens are always being sucked out of the airlock all the time. But I just don't understand the point of it. So this engineer hybrid kind of thing is now stalking Rain. We do restore Andy back to his nice self, and he doesn't become a killer android. But we lost all track of any kind of forward ground, even with the video game, like going in that direction with Andy and the mining community, and that in a synthetic and android lock people in the mine, because in the game there will be an eventual android revolt on a planet. I forget which planet it was, but they will kill the humans. And that's what you also have to come up against in the video game. If you have not played the video game, get your hands on it and play it. It is fantastic. So where do we go? We have an excellent, well-made film. There is no doubt. And we have a lot of nods to all the previous installments. And I guess that's okay. But we're doing this with everything now. And that's the bigger picture here. We have a lot of same old, same old. And again, if you want to fix this franchise truly and be a hero, correct the Newt error. That's what I'll keep saying. But we're applying this everywhere now. We see it in Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire, and Afterlife. We saw it in the Halloween trilogy, the new one, the 2018. We keep seeing this all over again, and we're making sequels to things. I just saw now that a green light was given to a Blade Runner 2099. Do we want it? Very few people even wanted 2049, and 2049 really failed to perform, although I enjoyed it very much, and it was a fun theater experience to watch. Did we need a 2099? And no doubt it's going to refer back to not only 2049, but also to Harrison Ford and everything else. So it's just constant nostalgia, and I really think it needs to stop. It's killing creativity. This nostalgia wave, this nostalgia porn is ruining forward momentum and creativity in films. We saw this, I think probably the best example of this, and it's ongoing, is the Star Wars franchise. The Disney Star Wars films, I mean, they can't run without nostalgia, and everything is lightsabers, lightsabers, lightsabers. And I'm not even going to get into the culture wars aspect of it and the agendas and everything else. I mean, there was one good line in The Last Jedi with, kill the past, let the past die. We're afraid to. I think that's how I'm ending this episode. We're just afraid to let go of that past because we don't have anything right now that's better. We're not creating anything new. And if we are, it's getting buried in streaming. Look, they did a Look, they tried something new at least with Prey, right? In the Predator series. I mean, it's still the same story. The Predator comes down looking for a challenge. It fights, it kills, and then it gets defeated, whatever. It finds a challenger that's worthy. Same thing. But they took it to a different time era. And they threw that thing on Hulu. Like, why wasn't that in theaters? I mean, I know Alien Romulus was also targeted, I believe, for streaming as well, too. I think it was going to be Amazon, if I'm not mistaken. Or Hulu. I'm not sure. It was one of them. It doesn't matter. It was targeted originally for streaming. And then for some reason, maybe they saw the dailies. I don't know. They decided to go for theatrical and it paid off. But again, it pays off mostly because of the incessant nostalgia. So what are we doing for the future of film? That's my question. We saw the Terminator series die with nostalgia cancer. I mean, as it just ruined that series. And we're seeing it all over again. I mean, not even all over again. It's never stopped. The Jurassic Park, Jurassic World films are nothing more than just referrals to the previous films, which all of this is just a reminder of how much better the previous films were. And that is Alien Romulus's Achilles heel. With all these callbacks, with all these nods, with all these references, it's just reminding you, go back and see the original. Because in the late 70s, especially during the 70s itself and the early 80s, there was a lot of progressive movement in American cinema. And right now, we are stagnated. We are mired in nostalgia. And again, I wrote a book all about nostalgia, about my high school years. But I also know those times are over. And as fun as they were, we got to move on. And that goes especially for our film and entertainment. Expect better, demand better, and most of all, want more. This is Harrison Smith, returning from a long hiatus with cinema. Thank you for listening.